Hi, it's Malcolm from Aquaspray. Today I'm going to show you how to remove, clean and replace the valves in your Kranzle pressure washer. Stay tuned. Hey, it's me again. Don't forget to subscribe. When you're taking out the valves, some of the tools that you're going to need a 22mm spanner, ring spanner, a 13mm ring spanner or a ratchet with a 13mm socket on it, a screwdriver, a pin is always handy, always keep a pin, and some long nose pliers. Very, very simple. All you're doing is taking these three nuts off and these three nuts off. We'll take the valves out, strip, clean it and put it all back in. I always advise make sure you've got a clean work area for putting all your valves in. The last thing you want to do is put it back together with some grit in it from the bench or whatever you need to be doing. So let's start. You can use a spanner. Put a 30mm spanner, give it a tap to undo it. Try not to use the open end spanner here. If it's really, really tight, you'll end up damaging this. Always try and use a ring spanner or a socket. Socket is obviously better. You can get it off nice and quick. It doesn't really matter which way these three valves valve covers are. All you need to do is just take them out for now. Sometimes they can be a little bit tight where the O-ring is caught in the threads and it takes a little while to get it out. But we'll get the bottom ones out first. Like this one here, the O-ring's caught, so it's tight pretty much all the way to the end of the thread. And the O-ring looks like that. Sometimes you can damage that O-ring doing that. This one doesn't look too bad. But just keep an eye on that. This is where your long nose pliers come in, and you take all three of the valves out. The valves, make sure there's no muck on them. We'll just put them beside the valve caps for now. Inside here, which is where your little pin comes in, is your O-rings for the valve seat. They will fit on there when it closes in together. So let's just take all them out. If you're using a pin, don't put a hole in the O-ring. You can use a screwdriver if you prefer. Sometimes they can be a bit of a pain to get in and out. Which this one's choosing to be. With a little bit of persistence and it'll come out like so. So now you've got the three O-rings and the three valves at the bottom. There's nothing else in that hole. Or there should not be anything in that hole. What you can do is you can plug the water on here. Just turn the tap on and flush it out. Make sure there's nothing in there. But if you check one valve and you find a blockage in that one valve, for the amount of time that it's going to take you to take the rest of the others off, just do it. It'll save you time in the long term. If you put it all back together and then find another valve block, that's what you want to try and avoid. You want to try and do it straight away. Always take the pressure gauge off first, but do not unscrew that pressure gauge by hand. You must use a spanner. Just give it a tap. Oh, not the camera. So only when it's really loose is when you can do this. So when it's tight, never ever sort of turn the pressure gauge by hand when it's tight, because you will break it, and they're not the cheapest gauges. So that's the middle valve off. Again, once you've got that away, you can either use a ratchet or a ring spanner. Again, with a ring spanner, if you use the open end part of it, you're more likely to damage that brass, and it will look horrible for a start. Let's just take the tops off. So there's them caps off. Same again, along those, just lift them out. Once you've got them out, take the O-rings out as well. Be careful not to trap the O-rings when you do this. If you've got a new valve kit, it won't make too much difference. Just try and be gentle with them. Without it, you're going to have juddering pressure. Okay, so all three are out. There's 3 O-rings, 3 of the valves for the high pressure, 3 of the suction valves, 3 O-rings. So just taking a valve to have a look at, if it'll focus in there, you'll see the spring inside that. There is a small valve that can be pressed, and sometimes you'll find that the valve will be trapped open with, say, an O-ring, something like that. And if it's trapped open, it won't be able to shut, you won't get the pressure, you'll get juddering valves. These are obviously brand new. You can find that these actual cages, the plastic cages, can be twisted. And when they get twisted, they won't work as well. And also check the O-rings are nice and round and there's no chunks out of them. And they need to be working perfectly. So when it fits back in, it will look like that and fit into the housing. So once you've got all the valves, everything in the middle here is what you would get in a valve kit. So you'd get the O-rings for the valve seat. You probably get I think you get the O-rings as well for the actual the valve cover as well. And then you get obviously the 6 valves. So if you're taking it out and you're checking it, just give everything a clean. Make sure that it's all spotless and make sure it goes back onto a nice clean surface. Don't be putting it onto a bench out the side and getting it covered in grit or anything like that, because it will block up again easy. So you want to be checking all over, see if there's any wear and tear on it, if there's any cracks in the plastic, any twists like I was saying before. Always clean the O-ring, make sure there's no splits in the O-ring, look around it. If you're just changing it with a brand new valve kit, you won't need to do this, because obviously the new valve kit would be fine. Making sure there's nothing in the springs, any grit or muck that could stop the machine working. So clean everything down, even inside the valve covers. And then once you've done that, all the valve covers apart from the middle one for the pressure gauge are the same, so it doesn't really make any difference. All the valves are the same, so it doesn't match if you get them mixed up. What you need to do first really is not do that because I need to change camera angle. So now back looking at the pump, you want to get your O-rings first. Some people like to put them on there and then just put a little bit of grease on and then put it in, but that's why I don't like it, because the O-ring falls off and then you only need to trap this and you'll get no pressure. So when you push it in, make sure, and I'll try and get a picture of this in a second, if it will focus in there. Make sure the O-ring is seated at the bottom nice, flat and flush on all three of them. Once they're all nice, flat and flush, the valve will just fit on the top. Just make sure it's seated. You should be able to feel a little bit of spongy sort of resistance on the O-ring. And that is that. So with the three top valves in there, you're going to put the outer valve covers on, and you want to make sure that these are started with your hands tight first before putting a spanner on it. Once you've got a spanner on it, tighten them up to the O-ring. When it stops, just a little bit of a nudge. Do not over tighten them. If it leaks, then you've got a problem somewhere else or the O-ring's gone. Just a little nudge. Pressure gauge. This is the most important one. So you can turn it by hand until you feel a little bit of resistance. Once that resistance there, if you try and turn this, you will break that pressure gauge. Use a 22mm spanner for the rest of the tightness, and then make sure you get the Kranzle word where it's supposed to be, or else I'll mess with my OCD. When you're doing these valves, sometimes the O-rings will fall out or fall down from where it's sat. And what you may need to do is just lift it back a touch, making sure that they're all seated properly. And again, you're feeling for the actual sponginess of the O-ring. And once that's on, again, start the threads before you put a spanner on it or a socket. And once that's done, let's get it back in frame. Then you can use a spanner or a socket. Once again, as soon as it starts, as soon as it stops on the housing, just a tiny nudge. Tiny nudge. Somebody will probably tell me the actual torque setting for this. I don't know it. If it's too tight, you're going to strip the threads. If it's too loose, it's going to leak. That is pretty much it. All you need to know about changing the valves on a Kranzle pressure washer. All the models throughout the range are pretty much the same. They'll have different size valves, have different coloured valves, but they'll all have the same idea. 3 nuts holding the valves in the bottom, 3 nuts at the top. Very, very simple, dead easy to do. Always check the valves. You'll probably know that it's something to do with the valve if you're getting a very juddering pressure when you hold the trigger and brrr, very juddering pressure. But that's it, sorted. You should be able to fix your own machine now.
Oh,